Just want to
We're,
share it.
we're going live.
Okay.
Nothing like a little bit of premier show technical difficulties to get us started out here, RC.
No, it's perfect, man. It wouldn't be us if it wasn't a breakdown.
Let me tell you something. It's funny because the longer you do this, I've been doing this for 3 years now. I know you've been doing it for a long time too, Randall. You learn to improvise. And you make it work, right? Because the best part about doing this is it's fun to do. And tonight we're rolling out a little bit of a different show. So I've kind of been wanting to keep the football commentary going along, and I can't think of anybody I'd rather do it with than my good buddy RC. RC's Randall Cunningham. I assume by your build, you're not the former Eagles quarterback.
No, that is actually the misnomer I use on some of the shows. It's just not the quarterback. If it's not a visual, it works for me. When it's a visual, it's not so good.
But here's the thing, guys. The commentary is all pro. I couldn't help myself. But anyway, we're gonna have some fun doing this, right? We're gonna talk about all kinds of different things. We're gonna stay mainly within the guardrails of the football world, particularly the NFL hot stove. But Randall, I just gotta tell you, I'm gonna throw you a curveball right off the bat. We were talking last night, doing a little test run, which is ironic because our test run didn't work at all, right? And we were talking about a little bit college basketball. I know you're a big Vols fan.
Yeah.
I'm a big Mountaineers fan. Who's the best team out there not named Gonzaga or Tennessee?
I hate to say it, but it might be in your conference. The team I'm most impressed by, I guess, is Baylor. Yeah. Seems like they're the most complete team. I worry about Tennessee. You've got 2 5-stars, and you're seeing with Kentucky and Duke this year, kind of that 5-star one and done thing is not working out so well. But I really, really like that Baylor team. I think they're built for the long haul.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they've just Scott Drew's done such a great job, and that's who I've picked as well. But it's really interesting. There's a lot of parity this year. I'll tell you, I can't believe some of those teams in the Big 12 aren't ranked. I can't believe Oklahoma's not ranked. I know they didn't look great against Kansas the other night, but they're really athletic, and it's really fun to watch this time of year. And it's tough to stay involved in all 3 of the sports. There's 3 really great sports going on right now, eh?
Yeah, it is. And I guess college basketball may be my second favorite sport.
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to stay involved in college football and the NFL when Monday through Sunday we've got great college basketball on. Come Saturday and Sunday, though, I think it'll probably be all about the NFL. Plus, we got a national championship game coming up.
Yeah, and that should be interesting too, huh? You get fresh off the upset there, Clemson losing, Ohio State kind of took some people by surprise, I thought, and it'll be interesting to see if they can repeat that performance. Really tough though against that Alabama team. They've really built quite a program there.
I've got to see Alabama every year, probably for the last 10, 12 years, and this offensive-wise is the best team they put on the field.
Yeah.
I don't know how you beat them. I don't.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, Ohio State can stay in a ball game, but like you say, having probably 2 of the top 5 picks, is impressive. So
and probably a top 10 pick on the sideline.
That's right. Who hasn't played all year, right?
Yeah, and probably a top 25 type running back that's going to be on the field. And Nick Saban, a West Virginia guy.
Yep.
I think he's changed the nature of college football. None of us have caught up with him yet.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And you could see it in who he's looking at. He's looking at Adam Gase, and he's looking at O'Brien to replace who I can't remember who he just lost. But it just goes to show you that these coaches really, I put Dabo Swinney in that category as well, right?
Yeah,
but they're just thinking of 2 steps, just like Belichick in the NFL. It's very Belichickian for college football.
Feels the same. The same.
Yeah.
So
So there's been a lot going on, right? This last week, a hot seat, a lot of heads fell, a lot of all of a sudden job opportunities open. So let's start off talking about that.
Well, I think we saw some good coaches, and we'll get into each one of them. We saw some bad coaches lose their job, and I think we saw some good coaches lose their job.
Yeah.
I really think Anthony Lynn is a quality coach, a quality person. It was hard to watch him get fired, but when we get to that situation, we'll talk about it. But then you watch somebody like Adam Gase, who you feel like has had every opportunity to succeed in the NFL and has done nothing with it yet. I put in my notes, made more money than any coach in the NFL with the less wins. So, you see where it's justified.
And you think about the number of players that he has ruined. And also players that have gone on from playing for him and done well elsewhere.
Tannehill.
Well, I mean, Tannehill, Drake, the list goes on, right? You look at what Kenyon Drake last year did after he got traded. It's remarkable. Look at Caleb Balazs. There's another situation. So it's one of those things where I really it'll be interesting to see what happens with Sam Darnold. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Ty Johnson and some of those young players in New York. It was remarkable, and I think it went largely unnoticed at the end of the year. They were playing really well.
They were. And you talked about Ty Johnson's a very young running back.
Yep.
Sam Darnold 3 years ago was as a coveted quarterback to come out in years.
And almost 2 years older or younger than the next highly rated quarterback out of that class, mind you.
And you have Mims, who's a young receiver. You have a
possession receiver.
You have a tight end that looks like he should be all pro that never sees the football.
Yeah.
So, and the Jets might be an opportunity that the right coach walks into and fix Sam Darnold, and he might look like a genius.
Well, and I think the foundation is there, right? I think that it's not like Darnold has shell shock. It's not like he's been ruined. There's a foundation that they can build on.
And you look at Miami now. That's pretty quick turnaround. Miami's, they've added some pieces, but they did it the right way. And they've traded away Laramie Tunsil and Mika Fitzpatrick, but they rebuilt the team in a way. They they get Houston's fourth this year. It's our first, which is the third overall. So Miami's a good situation.
Yeah. And I feel like they're well run down there. I think Tua's getting kind of a bad rap as not as good of a passer as he is. I think Tua's in a situation where he's kind of too athletic for his own good. And he can't decide on whether he wants to be really good as a thrower or really good as a runner sometimes. But boy, the potential's there with him. And, if you look at that young defense and, some of the weapons he has on that side of the ball, and like you said, the high draft pick, there's a lot of positives there in Miami. So,
and at Tua, 15 months off an injury that might have took somebody else 2 years to be back. I love Tua. I mean, I'm a Tennessee graduate. I love Tua, and I love Jalen Hurts. And that goes to show
I agree.
how far that Alabama program's in front of everybody else.
Yeah. Something tells me we'll talk about Hurts a little bit later.
I think so.
So, you mentioned it earlier, Randall, RC. What's going on with the Chargers there? You mentioned Anthony Lynn, feeling sorry for him. The fact of the matter is, though, he's 12-20 in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And, someone's got to be held accountable for that. There's too much talent on that team. You look at what happened with them early in the year. He was dead set on starting Tyrod Taylor. And it took a punctured lung for him to change his mind.
And I agree. And sometimes you look back 3 years, he's won 3 years ago, he won 12 games. And then in the last 2 years, he's won 12 games. And I think Anthony Lynn is kind of the old school coach. He's a running back coach by trade. And I just think he's a bad fit for what the Chargers want to do now.
Well, especially with Herbert, right?
Yeah, you've got And Herbert, that last class was just chock full of if the kids, and I call them kids, we're a little older. If these young men don't destroy their careers doing something stupid, there's a lot of quarterbacks that came out of that last class.
I'll tell you. Go ahead.
And I was at least high on Herbert, and I thought, wow, West Coast bias, Pac-10 bias, but gosh, has he played well this year.
I talked about Herbert last July, talking about him being underrated. Him and Burrow both. I was really high on Burrow as well. But I just thought with Herbert, just the build. The build and the demeanor for me stood out. And all it takes is opportunity. And you sure love that kid as a competitor. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he could drive a car hardly, right? But boy, when he gets out there on the field, it's something different. How about his relationship with Keenan Allen? We think that.
It was instant, too. I mean, and he's still got other weapons. You still got Mike Williams, a young receiver, and Hunter Henry, a young tight end. And the one thing that Anthony Lynn did is leave that running back room, which he was by trade a running backs coach. It's pretty stocked with Eckler and Jackson and there's some talent in that backfield. I think San Diego that's a juggernaut of a division with Kansas City, but I could see San Diego making the big jump quicker than maybe somebody else because I think that they have a foundation in defense. They got a great pass rusher.
Yeah.
They could jump fast. We could be sitting here. If you tell me next year we're sitting here talking about San Diego being a playoff contender with the right hire, I don't think I'm shocked.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess who's the right hire? Just your opinion.
I don't know, and I tried to come up with an answer today. I will say they need to find a coach with a quarterback's background that Herbert would 100% feel comfortable with. If you've fired Anthony Lynn, you have got to go and even include him in the hiring process and go, what do we want to do with this young man? Yeah. What's our offensive philosophy going to be? So
I got two names I want to float past you, and I want you to give me pros and cons to each of those guys. How about that?
Good enough.
Who's the better fit for the Charger offense between these two head coaches? Jason Garrett or Eric Bieniemy?
I've struggled with Eric Bieniemy. Now he's everybody's promised child, but I'm scared. I'm scared of one fact. I don't know how many plays Eric Bieniemy is calling on the sideline. Right. Now, of course, he's designing that offense.
Right.
And I want to say it's Bieniemy, but there is something to bringing Garrett in. And there's also, in a lot of the public perception, Jason Garrett's damaged goods. He won a lot of football games in Dallas.
Yeah. With not great teams, too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they were often overrated with their talent level.
Right. And he walks away and they bring in their guy. And I know Dak gets hurt.
Right.
But even before the Dak injury, the only way they were winning, Dak was the most efficient quarterback in NFL history through 4 games.
Right.
Could he have maintained that? I don't know. I don't know if they did themselves a favor. We'll find out over time. But I don't know if Mike McCarthy for Jason Garrett was a huge upgrade.
I would tend to agree with you. I don't know if it's an upgrade at all, to tell you the truth. But and we'll get to Dak a little bit later as well. It is interesting because as far as Dak's skill set, he's going to throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as for contractual purposes for Dak Prescott down the road, I think it's going to benefit him quite a bit.
I think Andy Dalton's 8-10 game performance he threw out on the field made Dak a lot of money. He should give Andy Dalton an agent cut.
Yeah. At least a cut, right?
Yeah. And Andy Dalton did get better, but
no, absolutely. The last couple games they played really well, but that honeymoon period was not pretty.
No, and to me, there's been a debate among my friends. We're here in Tennessee. We're around the Titans fans, but there's a huge Cowboys population too.
Right.
So we have debated all year who has the better core of receivers, Julio, Ridley, Russell Gage. And there's really, I know I've fought the Falcons side. There's no better core than those three in Dallas.
Right.
You know,
right.
your third receiver is Michael Gallup.
Yeah.
He's number one on a few teams.
Well, and I mean, the other part of that is Dak is such a great distributor of that talent. Like, clearly he has rapport with Amari, which is what they've missed without him in the lineup. The other guys would have splash games, but Cooper was consistently a threat with him, right?
Yes.
So, so we're getting a little off track. You got an answer for me? You said you prefer Garrett.
I think Jason Garrett would be the better hire in San Diego.
I honestly, I think that's a great fit, in my opinion. It just seems to make sense. Again, with Garrett's experience of being a quarterback, I think that's great for Herbert. You see what they did in Dallas. He's going to run the football. He's going to utilize the running back that he has. And, of course, the tight end aspect, right? Herbert has yet to understand how to use one of the most prolific young tight ends in the game.
Absolutely. And you've got to think that Bieniemy coming into the situation too, he's going to be given, if anybody's got a choice to make I want to go here, it's Bieniemy. And if he's not in love with Herbert,
right,
then he can go to some places. And, I think Justin Fields is a guy that probably closely mimics some skills that Mahomes has. Or does he want to go someplace and get a pure pocket passer like Trevor Lawrence? I mean, Eric Bieniemy there's probably 4 or 5 places he could land before this is over with.
Yeah. So the next place I want to talk about, RC, they've got the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
They need a quarterback.
Desperately.
Talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, what's your thoughts there about who's the best fit there?
I believe the Khan family's a little different than everybody else. Shade Khan today basically said, I'm making the number 1 pick. And I think it's a lot of smoke and mirrors if he picks anybody other than Trevor Lawrence. But, there are people that believe Justin Fields a better quarterback. But I seem to be in the Trevor Lawrence category more than anything. He's making the number 1 pick. Everything in the media has basically been that Urban Meyer would take the job with $12 million. And I think Jacksonville is the one place that Urban could go back and live in his same house that he still owns in Gainesville and coach the Jags. And it's the one place that there's not a superstar that's going to interfere with the superstar coach. You can only have so many superstars.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring in Urban Meyer and give him Patrick Mahomes and them not clash heads. I really think if Urban Meyer ever wants to get back in coaching and then at the NFL level, I think this is absolutely the right place for him. If it's not Urban Meyer's, maybe Smith, the OC from Tennessee. He seems to have done miracles with Ryan Tannehill. I think if you're drafting Trevor Lawrence, you've got to go get an offensive-minded coach and someone that's willing to structure an offense around that pocket passer that Tannehill and Lawrence is.
Right.
Of course, we saw Trevor Lawrence be a lot more athletic than anybody ever dreamed of. So I think it's either Smith or I think you throw your $12 million at Urban Meyer. If he says no, Smith, maybe the OC from Tennessee would be a good fit.
So that said, say Khan comes out of his pockets, he pays Urban Meyer. At that point, you'd have to think Jacksonville has to go all in, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The crowds would start to come, right? Gainesville to Jacksonville's pretty short drive. You have a bona fide building block all-star quarterback.
Yes.
You've got a fairly good offensive foundation.
Great running back.
And James Robinson. You got DJ Shark. You got some serviceable pieces behind them. Tyler Eifert comes to mind. Keelan Cole comes to mind. All of a sudden, just like that, things perk up, in my opinion.
Yep. And Jacksonville broke that team down. 3 years ago, that team was in the AFC Championship game
Yeah.
But it was built in a way that I think, and I tell people, let's talk about the Khan family. They just spent $300 million to start a wrestling organization to go against Vince McMahon. So the Khan family has more money than even the average NFL owner does. They own Manchester United. So
Okay.
I think if there's one place that would write that $12 million, it's there. They have a lot of draft equity with the trade that they made for Jalen Ramsey.
Right.
There's a lot of draft equity there. Again, I don't think Jacksonville's a long turnaround. And if you hire Urban Meyer at $12 million, it better not be. And Urban's not going to stay there and lose. He's proven himself at that.
Here's the biggest bona fide bonus for me to Urban Meyer going to Jacksonville. His defenses aren't going to be bad.
No, you're right.
They're going to be sound. They might not be as talented as some of the other defenses, but they're going to be sound.
Yep.
And you put a sound defense with that offense, all of a sudden, a one-win team turns into a 7 or 8 win team, and that's with that talent. Let alone you bring in a guy like Trevor Lawrence, or if you say it's Justin Fields, whoever it is, it all of a sudden turns the tables quickly.
And it does. And Doug Marrone, is I talk about him. He's to be a position coach in the NFL. I think you're a football coach, but when you move to that head position job, you're a CEO of a major corporation.
Right.
I think he's one of those guys that's in the dirt, that's a good football coach on the day-to-day. I don't know if he's a CEO. So Urban Meyer is a CEO. He's won everywhere he's ever been. And I think the Khan family, if they made that hire, would say, it's your program, run it, get it,
Yeah.
And Urban Meyer is not a lot of jokes have been made about Urban, but he's not long to stay. He likes to get in and win.
Yeah.
And he's not going to stay there 25 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's a good thing in this day and age, right? I mean, a lot of people want to hang out and, make you want to forget them.
Yeah.
That's not Urban's case.
Not everybody's Nick Saban these days.
Well, and, that's not what everybody wants to do. So, people like to build their legacies, and I think he's done a great job. So I think the next natural progression there is the NFL, and I think that does make a lot of sense.
And I think of anyone, and we've had this conversation, college to pro. I don't think when we get to the Jets, we'll talk about the interest in Dan Mullen and stuff. Dan Mullen don't feel like an NFL coach to me. Urban Meyer feels like he could walk into that room and be an NFL coach tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. And it's one of those things, RC, where it's like John Gruden. It's like, some of these other coaches. They're not just going to come back. Tony Dungy. They're not just going to come back for any job. They're going to come back for the job they want, the perfect job for them.
Yes.
And I don't think there's another situation that fits Urban Meyer better than Jacksonville Jaguars.
I don't know where it would be and when it's going to happen if it's not this one.
Right.
There was some talk about Urban Meyer to Texas. That really didn't feel right to me. I didn't think Texas felt some talk about Urban Meyer to USC. But really, after you've won national championships at 2 different schools, and you've won at Utah and you've won at Bowling Green, what do you got left to prove at that level of football? Not a lot.
Exactly. I totally agree. So, moving on, how about Houston's situation?
Houston is very intriguing to me because the one thing you don't have to question is whether they have a franchise quarterback in Houston. I sent some notes I took to you, and I don't think Bill O'Brien was a bad coach. I think he was a horrible GM. And a DeAndre Hopkins trade was enough to get him fired to start with.
Right.
There's so little draft capital there. You're going to have to invest. You've got a franchise quarterback. You don't know if you're going to be able to re-sign J.J. Watt. It appears J.J. Watt would rather leave Houston than stay. But you've got Deshaun Watson. So there's some hot names out there. I almost feel like Houston should be the place that one of the younger coaches go to that was willing to build. I also think a defensive minded coach may benefit Houston because you don't want to see the fan base has seen a lot of 40 to 30 football. So what do you want your fan base to energize them? Well, in Houston, I know they can shoot out with people. And in that division, you have Indianapolis, Tennessee. You've got some teams that can put up a lot of points. Go a different way. Try to build it through defense.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So it's funny. I was reading a few articles. Interesting fact. Deshaun Watson's only going to cost $21 million.
It's a buyout.
So the news that I read is if Watson doesn't like the new head coach, he can demand a trade and get out of that contract pretty easily.
That would be.
I can't think of a situation, Randall, where a quarterback isn't more entitled than this guy right here, and rightfully so. I think still to this day, people don't understand how good Deshaun Watson is. He might be the second best quarterback in the league.
He's close. If he's not it, he's close.
So to have that kind of leverage, you would think you have to bring someone in. If they do bring a defensive-minded, say they bring a Matt Eberflus in, you'd almost have to try and piggyback off of that and bring in an offensive coordinator that Watson handpicks.
Yes, absolutely.
But, man, you want to talk about working with a full cabinet on offense anyway.
I see Deshaun Watson in that offense. Let's basically say Brendan Cooks was a cast-off from the Rams. Kiki Kute, up till this year, had been on the sideline more in the game. David Johnson's 31 years old. Yep. Duke Johnson wasn't good in Cleveland. Daniel Fells is a marginal backside tight end. Yeah, a glorified tackle.
He's a good red zone threat.
He's
a big body in the red zone. He knows how to get open down in the end zone.
But Deshaun Watson makes all those guys.
You're absolutely right. So I have a little bit different viewpoint of that, RC. I differ with you on my opinion on Brandon Cooks. I think if you look at Brandon Cooks and you look at Will Fuller, what do both of those receivers have? Size and speed. What does Deshaun Watson do better than anything else?
Deep ball.
Throw up the jump ball downfield. Those two guys were brought in. I thought the move to bring Cooks in was genius. Yes, he was a cast-off. But it wasn't like he was a cast-off
right
and didn't perform. He just kind of caught up in a numbers game with the Rams.
And maybe what the Rams wanted to do, too. The Rams want to run a different kind of offense with Woods and Cobb.
Yeah, and the tight ends and the running backs, right? Yeah. So it made sense that they went out and acquired him. I didn't know that at the beginning of the year, I wondered how they'd use both of those guys as field stretchers.
You thought they were the same guy. That's the way I perceived them.
I agree. But when you're running a 4 wide receiver set, when you're running a 12 sets, right? And you got 2 tight ends there. Both of them can catch the ball, mind you. It's unconventional. But I think the players that they have – now, they need a running back.
Absolutely.
They need offensive line help. But that's why I bring up Darren Fells as a glorified tackle, Randall. I think that helps them to bring in a young tackle and let them be successful early. I think offensively, Houston's in a really good situation.
I would just like to see Deshaun get a little more. I think he's maybe a young running back and a nice possession receiver from completing the picture. They definitely, Cooks, and I do, maybe I misspoke, but yeah, he was cast off, but he was even in New Orleans, he really couldn't find a home. Houston fits him so well.
Yeah.
The David Johnson thing is just not going to work.
Trade. It was a terrible trade.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So, you can look at all. I talked about this last week on my show. Look at all these running backs from last year. It's clear at this point that you can draft a running back and bring them up to speed fairly quickly in the NFL offense.
And not even a first-round running back.
Exactly. So this is a team that's really, literally a player or two away from being a pretty bona fide contender. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. The problem in the long run is the draft capital that they've. It's going to be. I agree with you, but the struggle is so real. They don't own their first and second this year. They don't own their first next year.
Right.
And they're in cap trouble.
Yeah.
They're going to have to make some. And when we get to the Falcons, it's the same thing. These two football teams are similar, that they had success and they had to re-sign players. In the Falcons case, it was Ryan, Julio, Devontae Freeman, and you've got too much of your cap tied up. Same thing in Houston. They had too much of the cap. And I understand, I guess, what Bill O'Brien was thinking is clear cap space. But to me, DeAndre Hopkins was the wrong place to clear it.
Yeah.
So they just I think if any place the GM hire in Houston or whoever they're going to leave the GM in place or whatever happens, whoever manages that cap has got the hardest job in Houston. Hire you a good football coach. Go find you whoever the next guy that's going to invent Moneyball is. Put him in the GM office and let him go.
And that's a good point. I'll say it a little bit differently. The teams that draft well do well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right.
And if you can find players in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, you're going to build depth quickly.
Yes, and the good teams do.
Exactly.
No matter what.
Yeah.
They find it.
Yeah. You look at, and we'll talk about them hopefully a little bit later, the Steelers and what they've done. You're looking at, they've had all these injuries. They're starting a 6th-round guard. They're starting a 2nd or a 3rd round, outside linebacker and a rookie wide receiver. That's why they've been able to do well. They draft well.
Yeah. And again, to the Steelers, they've been through Le'Veon Bell, James Conner, Benny Snell.
Yep.
They've had the depth to do that.
Right.
Not many people can let an all-pro running back walk. And I know James Conner has been hurt, but that first year after Bell left,
he was great.
Great.
Yeah.
Absolutely good. And this year even beat up. Benny Snell was pretty good back.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't their problem. That was, the fact that we're getting out of scope here, but I will say this: the fact that the receivers couldn't get off bump and run coverage,
true,
was the reason why the Steelers had a lull. And it's a simple fix. RC, throw the ball down the seam to Chase Claypool. When they did that during the season, they were successful. When they didn't, they weren't.
And you'll probably see, and we've already talked about that too. Claypool will probably be. I would think if anybody's going to get a bump in targets in Pittsburgh, there's a substantial bump because Claypool did what he did on maybe 4 targets,
right?
5 targets a game. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and that's what if the Steelers are going to make a deep run, that it's going to be on his back. And it doesn't. They don't have to be big numbers, but they're going to be big plays.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it'll be interesting. What? So who we like in Houston? I mean, did we say that already? I'm sorry.
I think you said the guy, and I'll let you pronounce his name because I'll slaughter it. And I know he interviewed there. That's kind of who I have penciled in there, and I think the owner and the GM kind of. I mean, Houston is not the place that other than Eber.
Oh, Eberfluss, yeah.
He's the only guy that I really have saw heavily. This is our guy, So I'll go that direction, but that is the one that I believe we could end up hearing a name that no one's talked about also.
Or thought about, yeah. You're absolutely right. They're definitely kind of a wild card, right?
Yeah, it could end up being somebody we've never even thought of yet to this point.
Yeah. So we're getting through these. Let's talk, and the hour's getting past us, so let's speed it up a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
But there's still some big names out here, right? So what are your thoughts? Matt Patricia, 9-19 in the last 2 years. He's been fired now from a Detroit team that's got Matt Stafford, who they're not sure they're going to keep, got a young Kenny Golladay, got what looks to be a stud running back in DeAndre Swift. But RC, last in total yards in defense, last in points against in defense. Can we overemphasize how bad they were on that side of the ball?
A defensive coach, a defensive hire that you hired to fix your defense was that bad.
Yeah. I mean, you almost have to focus on that, right?
Yeah. And if Eberflus doesn't end up in Houston, that's a logical place for him.
Yeah.
And this one to me goes, it's real simple. I mean, I think Matthew Stafford's a real underrated quarterback. I love Golladay. He was hurt, but I love Golladay. DeAndre Swift looks like a superstar. It was a horrible hire, in my opinion, and it goes back to
Patricia.
Yeah, the Belichick tree just hasn't produced in NFL.
No.
And people want to put
Miami, Florida.
Yeah, and people want to put Verbal and Tennessee in that tree. He played there. He never coached there.
Yeah.
So I just go find the best defensive coach you can and clean house because that was a bad hire.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, so I read somewhere it's going to be up to the next GM whether or not they keep Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
They're going to have some autonomy, which is much needed, right? The Ford family hasn't done exactly the best job.
Correct.
With running their organization.
If Matt Stafford's unemployed at the end of the year, he won't be for long.
He looked great in black and gold, Randall.
Yeah, he would.
he looked great in a lot of places, right?
He will be a guy that he can write his own contract.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see who they bring in, whether or not decide to, completely tear down and start over. But, it's kind of been of their own doing a little bit on defense, right? You can't give away guys like Snacks Harrison and Darius Slay and expect to keep competing.
No, and they've had talent in Detroit. And Detroit's one of the most frustrating football cities to me. The company I work for is outside of Detroit. I work in the auto industry, and we have a huge Lions following. And those folks are kind of like Tennessee college football fans. They're like long suffering, and you're like, when are we going to make the right hire? I mean, I thought the Jim Caldwell hire was horrible.
Yeah.
The Matt Patricia hire was horrible. Yeah. If there's any, and I actually thought by default, if they fired Harbaugh at Michigan, that he might end up in Detroit. So go find you a good coach and pay him and give him some autonomy.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, you're absolutely right. And if I'm Detroit, I'm looking at a guy and I'm going to college and I'm looking at the smart. I'll say this. I don't mean this, and just because you know me, right? Neil Brown would be a great coach for Detroit.
Absolutely. Hey, Neil Brown's going to be a great coach. anywhere he lands.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. I hope he never leaves, right? But like that guy that is absolutely like a fundamental disciplinarian, still can run a multifaceted offense. That would be a perfect fit for someone in Detroit because they need someone like that.
And doesn't it feel like the town needs to fit the coach's style?
Oh, absolutely.
Coward is a Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
You can't imagine Bill Cowher not coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Right.
I'm Mike Tomlin, Pittsburgh guy.
Yeah.
It's
it depends on what part of town you go into, Randall.
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of places that Detroit is one place that you could feel comfortable maybe dipping into the college ranks. I would hate to be a college coach and go to New York or LA.
Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah.
You can go to Detroit and survive.
Yeah.
Is the press in Detroit any more demanding than the press in Morgantown, West Virginia, or Austin, Texas? Or it's probably a similar.
Less than Austin, Texas.
Yeah. So
I mean, you fired Tom Herman. I don't know, man.
I actually thought that Detroit might be a landing place for Steve Sarkisian at one point.
And that's what I was going to go there, but obviously that's not an option anymore, right? But I mean, you look at some of these guys, the Cincinnati coach, Fickell, right? That's another great example of someone who would be a perfect fit.
Absolutely. I hadn't even thought of him, and that's a perfect hire for Detroit.
Yeah. The guy from Ohio State, I know he said he doesn't want to go. That's another perfect fit. Day, right?
Yeah, I mean, great coach.
Yeah. So I agree with you. That's what they need. They need someone that's a good coach who knows how to develop talent.
Absolutely. And
because at the NFL, everybody's talented.
And leave the few good pieces you have. I mean, Matthew Stafford may never win you a Super Bowl, but Matthew Stafford, for what you're going to go through for the next 4 or 5 years, may be as talented as quarterback as you can land. And Detroit's also one of those places. Saw some mock drafts that had them trying to move up to take Justin Fields and stuff. Right now, the environment in Detroit's also one that could kill a quarterback's career. Because I think back to some great quarterbacks that have been destroyed by, Carr's brother in Houston when he first went there. Great quarterback, all the talent in the world. If he don't go to the Texans, he's probably still in the league. But, you don't need to spend 4 picks on moving up to get Justin Fields if you're Detroit. Right. You've got to build a roster.
You need to protect Matt Stafford.
Absolutely.
And you could do that on offense and on defense.
Correct.
So I agree with you. There's no sense in messing with that. If you're Detroit, you go defense first, maybe offensive line.
Yeah.
You got a good, solid young running game. Let's build on that. Bring in a good fundamental coach and go with that.
You can help DeAndre Swift and Matthew Stafford out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about real quick before we get to your Falcons. Let's talk about the Jets.
Jets.
Again, we touched on it for a moment earlier. Sam Darnold, Darnell Mims, Ty Johnson. There's some talent there. There's a lot of pressure there.
True.
It's a win now situation. You're not going to get 5 years to figure it out. What's your thoughts?
Well, the first name that came out was Dan Mullen. And I just thought, wow, that just don't even feel right. Plus, Dan Mullen he's a great offensive mind. To me, you ought to be able to get better than maybe Dan Mullen in New York, or Dan Mullen would be I think Dan Mullen would be a great coach in Atlanta. It's not probably going to happen, and Dan Mullen's probably going to stay at Florida. But that's the kind of press that New York has. That's the ultimate stage. I mean, managing the Yankees is the ultimate stage,
right?
In baseball, being the
Breaking
star.
Lindor today, the Mets.
Yeah, great trade by the way. I thought that was as a Braves guy, that trade bothered me.
Yeah.
Because the Mets got a lot better.
Yeah,
but
they did.
I mean, the Mets, the Yankees, the Knicks, everybody wants to win in New York.
Yeah. The Rangers, the Islanders, all the way down, right?
Yeah, I think that might be the landing place for Bieniemy. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's the place that he should go, but if you're going to be on the big stage, that's the biggest one. I've also heard a couple of names that they've pretty much say they were going through the process and they're going to hire. And the name that came up today,
come on,
Bill Cowher.
And come on, get out of here with that crap. I didn't think you were going there at all, buddy. Not at all. I think you were going there.
I was shocked. That's the reason I didn't want to say it.
Can I give you a name?
Yes.
Can I give you a name? One guy I'm interested in. I think this is a really good fit for him. And I don't know how it's kind of like you with Eberflus earlier, right? Robert Saleh.
Saleh is a great coach.
Yeah.
And I think he may end up there. But I guess my point about Cowher was that's New York. If you said Bill Cowher is going to become the coach of the Atlanta Falcons, people would go, there's no chance.
Right.
But New York's that stage that could get someone. John Gruden wasn't going to come back to coach the Denver Broncos, but the Vegas Raiders.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And John Gruden would have came back to coach the New York Jets. And you have a wide open market. So, Leia, you just don't. I personally hope Bieniemy. We'll talk about it in Atlanta, but I think there may be a rebuild that happens there.
Right.
But that first time coach in New York is just tough. Tough.
But the reason why I like this guy, and he fits elsewhere, right? He fits in Houston. He fits, in a couple other places we talked about. He's built really good defenses.
He has. San Francisco's dominating.
Now, those defenses have mega talent.
Yes.
But even this year, when they lost a lot of talent, that defense hung pretty darn tough, right?
Yes.
When I think of the Jets, I think of that hard-nosed, defensive-minded team. That's kind of, to me, what they want to build around. I felt like Gase never fit that. And I feel like that pendulum always swings, right? My dad always used to say, when a coach gets hired or when a coach gets fired, look for the replacement to be the exact opposite of what that coach was.
Yeah.
I think Saleh is the exact opposite of what Adam Gase was. And that's a good thing.
He's definitely a disciplinarian. He's definitely a guy that's not going to play no nonsense in New York. I know Atlanta's interviewing him. Atlanta's interviewing Bieniemy too.
Yep.
I think New York is going to swing for the fences, and one of these guys is there. Okay, if I can't lure somebody out of retirement,
right? If
I can't get someone up, but you got to think about it. The Giants aren't good either. If somebody becomes good, they can own that city.
Yeah.
And I think the Giants are closer. But have you ever seen a large city like that? Have you ever seen New York football be that bad?
Yeah, it is. It is. I want to mention one other name because we haven't talked about him yet, and I think we need to. He's the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots.
Yes.
Josh McDaniels had a failed experiment as a head coach with the Chiefs. Went back to his safety blanket. Bill Belichick until they lost Brady, had a dominant offense. Totally rechanged their offense this year, by the way. And wasn't bad the first part of the year, right?
Correct.
Is McDaniels viable?
And I meant to mention this in San Diego. I think he's viable in San Diego or New York. Right. I don't see Josh McDaniels. It didn't feel right when he was going to Indy. And I think it wasn't the right stage for Josh McDaniels.
Right.
Yes, New York, I could see that.
Yeah.
San Diego, I can see that. I mean, LA, I could see that.
I was going to let you slide.
I
Like you're going
was,
to let me slide when I say the Redskins here in a little bit.
hey, I lived in San Diego for a while. I still call them the Chargers, but I know that the Chargers had a desire to reach out to him.
Right.
Everyone says that the standard answer is he's waiting for the Patriots. Let me tell you, the worst job in the NFL is going to be the coach that follows Bill Belichick in New England.
Yeah.
That's the job I don't want.
Yep.
That's the job you need to go find somebody with some thick skin.
Well, I mean, you're set up to fail for sure, right?
Yeah, and
it's not like Belichick's going to leave the cupboard full.
No, he's not. He's gonna leave when he don't see any hope to win. There's also an offensive coordinator down in Carolina who had great success.
Brady?
Yeah, Brady, Coach Brady,
Yeah.
who had great success with Joe Burrow.
Nope, you're right.
And I know Atlanta, I think, are
Teddy Bridgewater, right?
Yeah. So that's another name if you want to build a young offense.
No, that's good. That's a good call.
That might be some way they look. So
yeah.
And you know what? I got a friend that loves the Jets, and he tried to convince me for a week that the Jets issue isn't on the field; it's off the field, and I think there's some validity to that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Randall, I've kept you hanging long enough. It's 10:56. We've waited the whole hour. Okay, I've teased you for the entire flipping hour.
Right.
The floor is yours. Tell me about the Falcons.
Atlanta is dear and dear to my heart. I live, and I can catch the subway in an hour and 10 minutes and be, on the way to the Falcons game. My friend Howie, season ticket holder that takes me 90% of the time. The Falcons are a salary cap mess.
Yeah.
They are projected. They're going to have to clear salary cap even to sign draft picks. That being said,
you want to be in, right?
No. Basically, your draft depends on you moving Julio Jones or salary somewhere.
Right.
Great pieces. Still got Calvin Ridley.
Right.
Running back's a mess. Matt Ryan, and I think this would be something that not everybody would sense, but, Matt Ryan is a horribly unpopular quarterback in Atlanta. And it goes back to Matt Ryan. Right? Yeah. They still love Michael Vick,
Yeah.
And his whole career, Matt Ryan has been compared to Michael Vick. And there's no bigger Dominic Wilkins, Hank Aaron, and Michael Vick in Atlanta. You don't get better than that. That's the reason I think of Bieniemy as an African-American coach.
Yeah.
Would be a great fit for Atlanta, which is a very urban,
hip
hop, a lot of music industry.
Aggressive.
It's a very different city. It's a city I love. I love Atlanta. I'm not criticizing it, but it is a city that is a different feel, especially in the South.
Yeah.
I think Bieniemy would be a great hire. I think Bieniemy is the one guy that would get the city excited. But the first decision the Falcons have to make is they have no GM. We're trying to hire the Falcons. I consider myself. They're trying.
They called you this morning, right?
They're trying to hire a coach without a GM, and I do not understand that.
Yeah,
Chappy, if you hire a coach and then you hire a GM that's just polar opposite, you're in trouble.
Yeah,
you're in real trouble. You also got to decide what's your future with Matt Ryan.
Yep.
Matt Ryan is the greatest quarterback in that franchise history.
Yep.
But I don't think
55,000 yards, Randall.
Yeah, I agree. And he's going to go in Atlanta, which for 50 years history has been 40 of those years a bad franchise.
Right.
That name needs to be in the Ring of Honor and will go up there with pride.
Yep.
But he's not going to be Tom Brady at 43, still viable.
How many other Falcons quarterbacks have a winning record for the career?
No,
not many, right?
Chris Miller, maybe. Chris Chandler took them to the Super Bowl. I would say, off the top of my head, I would think Jeff George did, Michael Vick did, and one of the Chris's. Not many. It's been Steve Bartkowski was there for a decade and was a pretty decent quarterback and could not win. You know, Jeff
How many games
George.
do you think he won? Sorry, I'm not trying to derail you. How many games do you think Matt Ryan's won?
He's over 13 years, some mid 150s.
113. 113 and 92.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by far, if we pulled that up, the most winning quarterback in that franchise history.
Right. Right.
Wouldn't even be close.
Right.
But he's still a valuable access. I think there's a team that would covet Matt Ryan. If you think you're close and need your quarterback, I compare it to Minnesota going out and get Cousins.
Right.
But it's probably where Matt Ryan's at in this point of his career.
Right.
Could he go to a Washington if Alex Smith hung it up and be a serviceable quarterback? Absolutely.
Right.
Could he go to, if Brady walked out of Tampa, could you bring Matt Ryan there? Absolutely. Chappy, I think me as a Falcons fan, I've got to sit back and say, it's time to tear it down. We're 3 years from a Super Bowl. We are a train wreck on the defensive side of the football. We have 50% of our salary cap tied up in exactly two players, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, who deserved what they got.
Right.
Julio Jones is a future Hall of Famer. Matt Ryan, borderline Hall of Famer. But don't you feel like Atlanta's a tear down and start over position?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because if you do it the right way, I mean, I don't know. You obviously would know better than I would. What pieces are there? I mean, obviously Ridley be a big piece to move off of, right?
You think Ridley and Hurst and Gage are good pieces to start with on the offensive side.
Right. So it's not like with Houston or with Miami where, like with Miami where they could go off and get rid of Laramie Tunsil and get rid of Fitzpatrick and turn it around. It's not that. But I feel like if you hire a good GM and you hit on your third, fourth, fifth round picks, you can turn it around fairly quickly.
And the thing that's going to be a lot of pressure on Atlanta, and we don't talk about, if Justin Fields is there in the fourth pick, that's a kid that grew up. Yeah, it's a kid that grew up 30 miles from the stadium too.
Right. Yeah.
So the popularity of the Falcons is really strange. I mean, I sat in those seats, and 3 years ago, I saw grown men crying that we were going to the Super Bowl, and I was at that game, and we was emotional. But really, we overpaid after the Super Bowl, and we're paying for it now. And I just feel you got a $1 billion stadium and an owner that's willing to invest. Let's do it now. Let's turn it around in 3 to 5 years. And if it's Justin Fields, if it's Wilson, if it's I love the kid. We haven't talked about Trey Lance. I love that kid.
Yeah.
So
let's do that. Let's do that next week. Let's talk about all these kids and what we think about them. Right? I mean, the hour got away from us. Can you give me 15 more minutes?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Let's do 15 more minutes. Let's pivot real quick and let's talk about this weekend's games.
All right. Good deal.
So let's break them down. We'll start with Saturday. The first game, Indy and Buffalo. Does Indy have a chance? They're playing really good ball. Does Indy have a chance of holding up a Buffalo team that's a little dinged up? Stephon Diggs is not 100%.
Yep.
But, boy, they've been hot, right?
I absolutely love the Buffalo Bill team right now. And if, and everybody that doesn't know, I do multiple podcasts. I have one locally that's, really this area, SEC kind of based. We just predicted all the playoff games, and we went all the way through the Super Bowl. And I did a 5-minute diatribe about how good this Buffalo team is.
Yeah.
They do. Phillip Rivers, I hate him, but, that's because he drove Peyton Manning crazy for about 15 years.
Yeah.
The guy would win with nothing in San Diego. Yeah. Literally, he had less than anybody and would win. I think Buffalo wins the football game, but don't be shocked. Frank Reich is an underrated coach too. Pretty good defense, couple of good running backs. shorten the game, pound the football. I actually picked this game in the other show as Buffalo wins, but the under hits for the gamblers out there.
Yeah.
So I could very well see that Indy shortens the game, and it's a close game. But I love Buffalo right now. It's going to be hard for me to pick against Buffalo.
Yeah, I like Buffalo too, but I do want to caution people. I think you kind of hit on it a little bit. Things could change pretty quickly if Indy gets out to a lead. Because what Indy's able to do is run the football.
Jonathan
Taylor is about as good as anybody in the league right now. Yeah. And the kid's just a rookie. And in all honesty, he's been handled with kid gloves to this point. They've had the luxury of having Jordan Wilkins. He's not been overworked. And boy, the last couple weeks, anybody outside of Derrick Henry, he's been as big of a workhorse as anyone.
Well, I was about to say that. Outside of Derrick Henry, does he feel like the one back that could take over a game and have 225 yards and win the football game off of just slowing it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor's a big-time back. He's of the young backs, I love James Robinson too, but Jonathan Taylor is the one to me that's just like, yeah, if you get him – and, Indy needs to give him the ball 25 times in this game. Yeah. Let him get lathered up. Let's see. Yeah. Let them tackle Jonathan Taylor for 4 quarters and see how they do.
Let them lean on him, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny. I did my projection for the first 3 rounds. Taylor is the only rookie running back I put in the first round next year.
Yeah. Oh, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. So we both like Buffalo. We both think Indy is a sneaky play, though, and definitely has the potential, if things break right, to kind of make things really interesting in the second round, right?
Yeah. Plus the weather. Buffalo's always a weather shoot.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Indy's an indoor team, so that's that might be interesting if the weather gets a little iffy. So that's something to look at as well.
But don't you feel like Indy, even though they're indoor, is kind of built to be an outdoor team?
Well,
big offensive
now
line.
They are. Absolutely now they are. And I think, the teams take on identity of the coach. I think that's what Reich wants.
Yep, absolutely.
So, what about that next game? And this next game is interesting, right? Because you're talking about a defensive game, LA and Seattle. You're talking about 2 teams. Seattle was the laughingstock of the league the first half of the year on the defensive side of the ball. All of a sudden, Jamal Adams gets healthy, and things change, right?
True. And, there is we're going to talk about great quarterbacks. And I 5 years ago, if you had asked me if Russell Wilson was a great quarterback, I would have laughed at you. 5 years later, when Russell Wilson cooks, he cooks with the best of them.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think Pete Carroll slows him down. And now that, like you said, the defense is playing better, Pete Carroll's been happy to win football games 21-17. And those are the games early in the year he was winning 41-13, 41-31.
Right.
And that defense was Atlanta-ish. There's no other word for it.
They were worse.
Yeah.
Early in the year. You know how I am. I like to do my stats every week. They were worse for about the first month, the month and a half of the season. They were worse.
Gerald Adams, though, is a different maker as a player.
Yeah.
I love LA's defense too, but I think the difference in this game is at quarterback. Justin Goff is a serviceable, good all the way around.
Playing.
Yeah,
it's that Wofford kid this week.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So then you've got elite in Russell Wilson, and I'm going to go with Russell Wilson. I wouldn't be shocked to see Russell Wilson get on a run and maybe take Seattle a little farther than we think so.
Yeah. One player to watch out for, can they block up Aaron Donald?
Nobody can.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to scheme around that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Aaron Donald is the one player that eliminates running game on his own. I mean, I could see this being an ugly football game. This is the 3rd time they played too, I believe.
Right. Yes.
So this is an ugly. These are 2 teams that know each other well. I wasn't even thinking about Goff not playing.
Yeah.
So
that could be good or bad, though, right?
Yeah, I would go. I was going to pick, even if Goff was playing, I was going to pick Seattle. So
yeah.
Seattle, fairly not a blowout by any means, but Seattle comfortable. I'll put it that way.
I'm taking the under, Randall.
That's a good play.
Hey, I'm going to take the Rams here, and I'm going to take the Rams just because I think they run the ball better.
That's
it's one of those things. If it were a situation, DK Metcalf is one of the most underrated players in the game, right? But it's almost like they've forgotten.
I agree. I'm hoping.
He's one of the best players in the game. If they feed DK Metcalf, they could blow past the Rams.
Right.
But I feel like the Rams run the ball a little bit better. The Seahawks still play conservative, and I'm going with the Rams here. A little bit of an upset.
It's a big upset. That's stepping out. I've got one here in a minute, but I'm not stepping out on that one.
You're not going to take the Redskins, are you?
Yeah, we'll get there in a minute.
Well, that's next. That's next. Talk about it. Tampa Bay, Washington.
I love Washington's defense.
Yeah.
And the one thing that Tom Brady in his whole career has never been able to deal with is a dirty pocket. And everybody talks about the secret of why New England was good for so many years, because they had the best offensive lines. New England never had the most talent outside. They've had great offensive lines.
Yeah.
I really think Washington is going to get after Brady, and I already picked it once today. I'm gonna call the Washington Redskins. I still call them the Redskins too.
Not on purpose. It's never on purpose.
No, I don't want to. I just do. But I do like the new helmets with the numbers. I don't know why, but that was my upset of the day. And I love Chase Young. God, I love Chase Young. That defense is great.
Here's why I like the Redskins. Ron Rivera's a hell of a coach.
He is. Absolutely.
People don't realize how good a coach he is. And, yeah, the talent might not be what he wants yet, right? Especially offensively. But they're going to wreak havoc on the front end on the defense. Their secondary is probably a little bit iffy still, right? But I feel like up front, they've been able to run the ball fairly well this year. And even without that much of a threat, I mean, let's face it, Dwayne Haskins is terrible.
Yeah.
Alex Smith is 130 years old.
Yep.
Serviceable, but 130 years old.
But maybe I'd like to know if this is the two oldest starters combined age in the history of the playoffs.
It very well might be. But they've still done well.
Yep.
It's an interesting matchup. I don't know if I'm taking Tampa here. I feel like on offense they just got a little bit too much for Washington to overcome. Antonio Brown scares me. He's really seeming to catch on. I hate saying that. Not so much because I hold bias or anything like that.
Yeah.
I just I don't know. I feel like he's getting paid. He's paying the benefits of being Tom Brady's boy.
He had 50 catches in over 8 games. And we didn't even talk about Mike Evans could be setting.
No, I mean,
you know.
It's funny. I went back and looked at last year's ADP, and of course, the highest draft pick of all those players was Chris Godwin.
Yeah,
and he's just not been great. So if he can start to pick it up, I mean, there's a lot of talent in Tampa.
Tons. More talent, more pure talent than any team in the NFL, maybe. So
you can make that argument for sure.
I like Washington's defense, and I figured I got to make a stand somewhere. I think that's an 8.5 point dog.
That's a big one, man.
I'm going out. If they win, I'm gonna be hard to deal with next weekend if I drag that one out.
Go big, right?
Yeah.
All right, 3 more games. Baltimore, Tennessee. Who you got?
Great game, great matchup. If you remember last year, Tennessee kind of wrote that recipe that everybody's used on Lamar Jackson. Rush 3, lay 8 back. That being said, I just feel like Lamar Jackson's got something to prove. And I love Derrick Henry as a football player, but nobody in the NFL has more to prove in these playoffs than Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens, and I'm shocked that they're a road favorite.
I don't get it either.
I think they've got just enough to get it done at Tennessee. And maybe a high-scoring shootout game. Give me Lamar Jackson to make one more play than Derrick Henry.
I agree. I'll say it emphatically. Baltimore's playing some of the best football in the league right now.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, RC. They're not playing their best football yet.
No, I agree.
So when you get Jackson, back there with the sea legs, if you will, and he breaks containment, people forget how good Hollywood Brown is.
Yeah.
People forget how formidable Mark Andrews is. He's been going to Miles Boykin and freaking J.K. Dobbins more than anything. And Dobbins is great, right? He's a great compliment to Jackson. Baltimore scares the crap out of me, man.
Baltimore, I really feel, and I think, again, on the sideline, they got a great coach.
Absolutely.
I just feel like they laid such an egg last year that they really, really are going to come into the playoffs. And I do play this. I play the revenge game in my head. And after Tennessee beat them at home, I believe they were the 2 seed. They nothing more. It's not a popular pick down here. I got flack already.
Right.
But I'm going to go. I'm sticking with the Ravens.
Yeah. No, I think I don't think it's close.
And I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, that's just me. I see a situation where Jackson runs for 150 yards, throws for 250 yards, and Brown and Andrews both score touchdowns. That's how I look at it. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, and again, not to take anything away from Tennessee, they've had a great year. Point blank, their defense hasn't been very good. Their offensive line's been subpar since they lost Taylor Lewan.
Yep.
So for a large now, granted, Henry's had big games in spite of that, but I don't think it adds up to. You don't beat a team like Baltimore with a patchwork offensive line.
Yeah, and Derrick Henry, unfortunately, is going to one day. All it takes to beat Tennessee is a halfway bad game from Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah,
and they're beat.
Yep. All right, 2 more, man. Tell me what your thoughts are. I mean, this seems pretty easy. Chicago and the Saints.
It does. But we actually had someone in our little podcast earlier pick the Chicago, and they made pretty good reasoning, which is kind of the same as the Washington Tampa Bay game. Chicago's defense is going to get after Drew Brees. I don't get it. I didn't see it. I love Chicago's defense, but you've got just too much firepower on the other side to me, and that's a huge number, 9.5.
Yeah,
just more for me. I mean, I just don't see the path for the Bears to win.
Yeah, and in all honesty, I mean, the Bears have kind of been smoke and mirrors all year, right? Their defense is serviceable. Trubisky is the right decision for the Bears. I'm not
absolutely.
Montgomery's playing well.
Absolutely.
Right? And Robinson, I think, is a widely underrated wide receiver. I mean, he's a true one of a handful of true wide receiver ones in the game.
A league winner in fantasy for a lot of people this year.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, outside of those 3 players, there's nothing there.
It's a hot garbage on the offensive side of football.
Mooney had a pretty good game or a pretty good year, right?
Yeah.
But he's out.
I think so.
Yeah. So, that leaves them in a situation where you're relying on guys like Cole Kmet. You're relying on guys like Anthony Miller. That's not good.
No. And I think they kind of smoked and mirrored into the playoffs, to be honest.
So,
there's
teams
like
crap last week, man. Let's be honest.
There's teams that's sitting at home. I would rather play the Bears than them. And I mean, it's I would rather at this point. I would rather play the Bears than the Eagles.
Absolutely. Or the Cowboys, even, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So they cover. Does New Orleans cover?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. I think you're right. All right, man. Last game. Obviously you see what I'm wearing on my head.
Yeah, I got you.
You know where my pick's going, but talk to me about it. Who you like? Cleveland and Pittsburgh, the rematch, part 2.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and get it out up front. I'm going to end up picking the Steelers at the end of this, but let me say that. And the Browns beat a depleted Steelers team. Let's just be honest, But the Browns Steelers, that's like West Virginia Pitt playing in a playoff scenario. I mean, there's no better matchup you can get in the playoffs than the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I'll go one step further. It's like, it's like West Virginia Marshall.
Yes, absolutely. It's a.
I was going to say Penn State, West Virginia, but I didn't want. I couldn't go that route.
It is a rivalry.
The spectrum, but we don't want to talk about that.
They are few rivalries truly in the NFL. I mean, Atlanta, New Orleans is a rivalry. You think of the Cowboys and the Eagles, and you think of Kansas City, Denver,
right,
or Kansas City, Oakland. But there's few rivalries. That's one of the better ones.
Yeah.
There's just too much. And the difference to me is on the sideline. And if I've got in
the head, right?
Yeah. If I say Baker Mayfield, Ben Roethlisberger, I don't know. If I say Nick Chubb, James Conner, I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm going to get down to it's Mike Tomlin. And it's going to be hard for me to pick against him in this situation. Yeah.
I like Stefanski, though. He's doing good things there.
Yes, he is.
But it's not quite yet. It's not there yet.
It's not. And, this to me is the second game on my list I want to watch. I want to watch Washington, Tampa, just because I've just got a root. I just want to see. All right, a Falcons fan, Tampa, New Orleans, we want them to get beat.
Yeah, of course.
I just want to see. I just believe Washington's going to get after them, and I think next year we'll be sitting here hopefully, and we'll be talking about who's going to be able to deal with that Washington defense in the playoffs. So this game though, this is one that I'll get my little 10-year-old daughter. We'll order pizza and we'll just sit down and we'll watch the game and don't need a rooting interest.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be fun. I'll tell you. The breakdown of the game for me for the Steelers is just the impact of Ben Roethlisberger. And I don't think you're going to see in the games past, they've kind of been hesitant to stretch the field. I think Chase Claypool is the deciding game in the deciding player in this first round for the Steelers. I think you're going to see them hit him early. I think you're going to see them hit him often. He's going to be – they do not have a player that can cover him down the seam. And they haven't utilized that yet.
The DraftKings, that's one of the stacks I'm playing.
Yeah. No, and I love Johnson again this week. I love Claypool. And I think Roethlisberger this week, Ben's still on his screw you tour. People don't realize that. Ben's on this, hey, you know what? I'm not a washed up over the hill quarterback. And that's why you've seen the play out of Roethlisberger this year that you have. So, I don't know about next week, but I feel pretty safe that the Steelers are going to pull this out against the Browns this week.
So my one DraftKings tip, my base lineup, I'm playing Ben, Johnson, Claypool, and running it back with Chubb.
Nice.
I really think that game could shoot out.
Oh, I think so too.
I could see Pittsburgh getting up early, and Cleveland chasing. And unfortunately, when Cleveland chases, it's got to be with those two running backs because outside without Odell Beckham, they really don't.
Let me tell you another aspect that you didn't mention there. You got to throw the Steeler defense in there.
True.
You got to throw the Steelers because the chances of them scoring in a shootout go up exponentially.
The chances of Baker Mayfield turning the football over goes up exponentially.
Well, and the chances of them taking that turnover to the end zone, right? That's the thing. That's the takeaway. So listen, We're sitting here. It's 11:25. We did it like nothing, right? We could go another an hour 25.
Yeah, easy.
Let's do it next week.
All right.
So first show, I think it went well. Chappy and RC, the other angle. We're going to come to you Thursday nights at 10 p.m. We're going to talk football, but we're also talk some basketball, probably some baseball down the road, just whatever's on our mind. But I hope you guys come back. Hope you enjoy the content. I know I've enjoyed it. How about you, bud?
Hey, I loved it. It's a good talk. It's a good love to get my NFL. One of my favorite weekends of the year coming up. You know, football wire to wire on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty great. So guys, enjoy the show. Don't forget, like and subscribe. Chaps Fantasy Sports, Draft for Upside. Join us, like I said, Thursdays at 8 is my baseball show. Thursdays at 10 is our CNI, The Other Angle. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you next Thursday.
Peace.
Bye, guys.
See you, Chappy.
All right, bud.